Welcome to the Anxiety Relief Summit, where you will find holistic and practical solutions you can start taking today to break free from the worry spirals, regain your peace of mind, and confidence to take action on the things that matter most. Hi, I'm your summit host, Laura Leavitt, and the information provided in this summit is not a substitute for counseling or medical advice. The information presented here is meant to inspire and educate listeners, but are not guarantees of any kind. I'm so glad you're here, and let's get started. Welcome, everybody. So glad that you've joined us for the Anxiety Relief Summit. And today, our guest is Aaron Harvey. Welcome, Aaron. So glad you're here.
Hey, Laura. Thanks for having me. Yeah, great to be here. Thank you.
And thank you for coming. So let me tell the guests a little bit about you. Aaron Harvey has a podcast, and in his podcast, he talks a lot about his personal journey with anxiety and the solutions that really helped him overcome his anxiety. And so I'm excited to hear that story. He lives in Western Australia with his wife and 3 young girls. He's a working man.
Yep,
and
right.
Is just moving into the podcast realm and loving it. He focuses on mindset, health, and adventure. He loves delving in deeply to help people reconnect with themselves and the outdoors, because he really found that was such a good help for him. His show aligns with people and their journey with anxiety as well. He had quite a health battle with weight loss. That was one of the turning points for him, and he talks about that as well, and we're going to hear about that tonight too. So welcome, Aaron. I'm excited to hear your journey.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks for the opportunity to share. I'm always more than willing to share my story to help other people. So it's really privileged to be here. Thank you.
You're welcome. And sometimes people just go along and just keep working, nose to the grind, stay in jobs they don't like, have relationship troubles, their health starts to decline. And then there's a point where they kind of stop and go, I can't do this anymore. It's starting to pile up. Did you have a point like that?
Yeah, I did. And for some people, if they're lucky enough to have a realization and catch it before it gets too far, that's great. But that wasn't really the case with me. I found I got to a point where I broke and everything sort of fell apart. But when you have a low point, there's only one way to sort of come back, and that's to bounce back up. So I definitely hit rock bottom, but that forced me to reassess my situation and my lifestyle. So that was really, not a great thing to happen, but it had to happen, and it got to me to where I am today. So, yeah.
Well, we want people with the information on this summit to learn how to be resilient. So awesome. I mean, I'm sorry you had to go through that journey.
No. And, I sort of look back in it, not in a resentful way. It had to happen for things to change for me. And I'm sure it does for a lot of people. Generally, I find that the people that I've spoken to or the guests that I've had is that there's had to be some sort of major event to make them reassess or make changes. You know what I mean? That's like they've been pushed to the edge to the point where they have to do that. So.
Yeah, the changes and the processes might be a nice thought, but to really actually start putting them into action and taking them serious, making them a priority, that's when the difference happens, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you've really got to be pushed. Yeah.
So go ahead and tell us what you'd like about your journey and what you found really helped in the beginning and that you keep using now to help.
Yeah. So at the start, I'd had already begun my weight loss journey. I was expecting the birth of my second daughter, and I thought it was time for me to get more active so I can be around as a parent and physically around for my kids. But I was working away at this stage. We do what we call FIFO, or fly in, fly out. In Western Australia, it's quite a big mining and an oil-rich state, a lot of resources. But it does involve a lot of people working away, where you'll fly to work for 1 to 3 weeks at a time, maybe even 4 weeks at a time, which I'm sure maybe people in Canada and the US might be familiar with in the oil industry. And for me, it was starting to hit home a bit with leaving away. I was on a 12 days on, 9-day off roster. So I'd fly to work for 12 days, live in a camp, and then come home for 9 days. So about a day and a half travel flying in and out. During this time, being a new father, it was really hard to be away from my family, and I was missing them greatly. And the resource that I was working in wasn't doing so well. So work was starting to drop off, and there was a bit of job insecurity at that time. We just bought a house and moved to Exmouth, where we live in Western Australia. So there was a lot of insecurity there, and we ended up moving into an unmanned mining camp, which was pretty lonely. There was only 2 of us working. A lot of our co-workers had been laid off and been made redundant. So our team of once we had maybe 25 people, had been reduced to about 2 or 3 people, 4 maybe people. So really lonely. We kept to ourselves a lot, and I was working in isolation and incredibly lonely. And that's when things sort of started to stack up on my mind quite heavily. Yeah. Then also sort of during that time, I had lost most of my weight, and I was feeling really good about myself and fit. And thankfully I was achieving goals, which were great, because achieving goals sometimes is a really good way to boost your confidence, which I was lacking at that stage. So while I was on this journey, at this stage, I started driving in and out to work because the flights were getting quite expensive, and we were getting a bit of financial stress, living where we were and the cost of living. So I started driving to work, and just thinking a lot about my situation on a 14-hour drive to work. So, but thankfully I started reading a lot of really good books about, I was getting into endurance running and ultra endurance athletes, and their mindset really fascinated me, because to push yourself to the edge physically, it needs a lot of mental strength. And I found it really fascinating where people go in their minds to endure these incredibly painful, endurance events. But I also learned that there were people out there like me who were struggling, where they had had transformation journeys physically, but they weren't doing so well mentally. And that made them take a screenshot of their life and think about their situation. And they realized, and it suddenly then struck me in the fact that I'm getting healthy and I'm getting fit, but I'm not mentally healthy and fit. And it made me realize I needed to look at that side of my life as well, and make some changes.
Mm-hmm. But it's for you, it started with making the physical changes first.
That's right. Yeah.
It seems like it, from what you're saying, that it quickly turned into wanting to improve the mindset as well. So
that's right.
It didn't take long for that to kind of follow.
No, yeah, I was very lucky in the way that I was sort of on that physical fitness journey. But I think in the background, the anxiety was probably lingering and starting to creep up on me without me really even realizing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Some people can have outward anxiety that really shows. They're just a buzz, right? And other people can have anxiety that's just simmering and they're keeping it in. And, we have to kind of respect everybody and how they deal with it, because we don't know what's going on, right?
Yeah, yeah. And anxiety, it's not something you can see. So it's a hidden one. And I think a lot of Australians really do hide it because they see it as an area of weakness, and people don't want to appear weak. So they lock it away and they deal with it on their own. And that's just really not a way to deal with anything. If you're internalizing it, then, the negative thoughts just pile up and there's no release. So it just gets worse and worse and worse, and it snowballs until you come to breaking point, which is,
it turns into, two different ways. You're a train wreck about to happen, or it turns into depression where you can't get yourself up and functioning again. So,
and that's the path I started to go down as it got worse for me. I did end up leaving my FIFO work, and I quit because it took a long while, because it's a really well-paying industry and the money's good, and you question, how am I ever going to survive without this good money coming in and supporting my family, with my wife on limited work while she's being a mother. So that thought was always there, but it got to a point where I think I realized that whatever was on the other side of taking this leap, it was all going to be okay. The overthinking was causing me a lot of harm as well. Once I simplified that and thought, I've just got to, surrender to this situation and know that if I take this step to start changing my life, that what's on the other side is going to be okay. So I did leave. It was kind of like an implosion at the same time, but it all led to that happening. Yeah.
Yeah. And, with people with handling anxiety, it's, life. It's not just in one area, health
right.
or mindset or relationships or finances. It kind of affects it's a ripple effect out into every area of your life. And so
That's right.
we can handle and start working on the physical side and the mental side, the spiritual side, but we also have to look around at some of our environment issues and decide,
That's
like
right.
you did, is this
Yeah.
job contributing to my anxiety? Would it help if
Yeah.
I leave? And you made a good
100%.
decision for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Look
it
where you are
was,
now. It's good.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. It was the start of the change. There were other factors, like you said, there are so many other factors. It's such a complicated thing because for me, my confidence was frozen, and anxiety can be a really thought paralyzing condition where you doubt. For me, I doubted everything that I did. I completely lost my confidence in my abilities to do my job and to do other things. So, but once I left my job and I came home to spend time and be with my family, I realized that I started putting pressure on myself in other ways, as being a good father or being a good husband or partner. So when I left working away, I thought I needed to sell our house, and I loved traveling, and we traveled a lot when we were younger. So I wanted to buy a caravan or a Winnebago and go traveling and give my kids this opportunity to see the world. And because I was putting the pressure on myself to then provide this lifestyle I thought my family deserved, I was putting pressure on myself in another way. And that just really actually sort of started making it a bit worse because I just found another way to put pressure on myself.
Yeah. Yeah. So what kind of things did you do to really pull yourself out of that? You said you lost a lot of weight.
Yep.
Almost 100 pounds.
Yeah, it was about 40 kilos in Australian, which I think it's about maybe about 100 pounds. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What did you do to do that? Was that some kind of fitness program or?
No, what I wanted to do was just start running. It was really the key. The running thing came a little bit down that fitness journey. All I wanted to do in the beginning was to do 10,000 steps a day. I had a friend that did it the year previous, and he just had like a step tracker or a Fitbit or something like that. And he said, I did 10,000 steps a day this year, and it's really improved. It just makes me more active and just gets me moving every day. And at that stage, I wasn't moving a lot. I think I was doing about 5,000 steps a day. So I got hold of a Fitbit and just thought I'd track what I'm doing. I think it was like December or something like that. And I thought I'll just track what I'm doing now, but then January 1, I'm going to do 10,000 steps a day. And then that just snowballed from walking when I was on camp and I was on site. There wasn't really a lot to do, but we had a little gym out the back. So I would just hop on the treadmill and just walk just to get my step count up for the day. And that just turned into getting a bit bored on the treadmill because there's no TV or anything in the gym. So I started doing a little bit of running just to break it up, and it just snowballed from there. Then it ended up with me running outside, and then it ended up with me trail running, which, to be honest, ended up being quite a big factor in my sort of healing, I guess, if you like to call it that. It was just, it got me outside, it got me breathing fresh air, and it got me amongst nature, which is a really key thing that I stressed on now to a lot of people is time in nature is such a great healing factor for the mind as well as a beautiful stillness to it. So.
It is. I like the name of your podcast, Inner Expeditions.
Yeah. I wanted to put something out there that showed it was just more than me changing externally. I probably changed more internally than externally through the whole process with what I learned and the person I sort of started to become. And my wife actually really helped me with the title of that. She sort of said, you've done a lot of internal work, so it should be like a inter expedition, which is I thought was really perfect.
Yeah. So usually people that get into fitness get into other areas of holistic type things, like change their eating and was that the same with you?
Yeah, it was actually. I found through I was definitely had a. I didn't want to look at losing weight in a way of a diet or a fad or something that I would just do for a little while. I realized that my lifestyle needed to change altogether, and it had to be sustainable for me to live the rest of my life. I needed to find a system that I would be happy to do continuously, not just something like lose the weight and go back to my old ways. So through towards the end of where I lost most of my weight, I started developing a bit of an injury because I started pushing my performance and I was running faster and a lot harder. So when I had knee trouble, I couldn't exercise anymore, and I started looking into going on to a plant-based diet, which was quite good. I just wanted to keep the weight off, even though I wasn't being active. And I found out that that was actually a really good for my mindset as well, because I was already feeling really healthy and good from the fitness side. But by improving what I ate, it sort of led to the flora in my intestines and my gut. You have the microbiome in your stomach, and that can really fuel your moods as well. And the better you fuel them with whole foods and a sort of plant-rich diet. I'm not saying to go 100% plant-based, but there's certain levels of foods that if you eat in excess can actually have a bit of an imbalance and infect your mood as well. So I ended up on a plant-based diet. I've been vegan for 3 years now, and whole foods, lots of fruit, vegetables, nuts, seed, grain, limiting processed foods like processed white carbohydrates and things like that, and a lot of fermented foods. So I have like a lot of kimchi, and sauerkraut's really good as well, and those sorts of things. I drink a bit of kombucha just to keep, and it's incredible how those microbiome in your intestines can really help your mood and make you feel better. It's I started realizing I needed to take a holistic view on not only my physical but my mental well-being as well. So then that sort of started me on a whole nother journey of learning, which was super exciting. I'm still on it now.
Well, if you take the holistic approach, you're going to be healthier long term in so many ways. You're not just looking for medication and a quick Band-Aid fix, which we sometimes like, and sometimes people do need that.
Yeah, that's right. And
right?
if it gets to a point where it's your whole world is falling down and you need something just to quickly steer you back on course, that's great. But long term benefits can really take some really hard work, and you've got to put some hard yards in and have some tough conversations with yourself, and be possibly prepared to put some effort in to have longer term gains. But it's well worth it.
Yeah, and if you have a spouse that's kind of dragging their feet and not wanting to be helpful at first, they start to see that you're sticking to it, and then pretty soon they're joining in, because they really do want to have you happy. They want to be healthy, and they'll give up that little bit of resistance and fight in pretty short time and be on your side. So
that's right.
I had another question. What was it? Shoot, now I've lost my mind. I've lost my thought. So yeah, I love the idea of holistically approaching anxiety, because it's such a variety of ways that people deal with it and what things people like. So they're going to find what works for them. Sure. They have to get into a place where they can be presented with a bunch of different options. For you, it was long distance running, ultra endurance running. That's not for me.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So we just want to present people with a lot of different ideas and people's journeys, so that they can see that there's a lot of different ways out there. Find something that works for you, mix it up, have a lot of different tools that you can try and use, and get some support from people. Look into it, educate yourself, right?
Yeah, and it doesn't, for me, it was running, because I'd already fallen in love with running. It drew me outside, but it really can be anything that gets you to be present and in the moment. Anything where you might put your thoughts into something. It could be painting or any type of craft, fishing, surfing, just going for a walk, you name it. Anything that requires you to focus your attention on one thing if you think about it, is almost a form of meditation, because you're solely thinking about one thing and you're not worried about anything else outside, because a part of anxiety is worrying about things in the back of your mind. Your mind's overactive and you're worrying about things constantly. And those things most of the time never happen. It's incredible how much time we waste thinking about things that will never happen. And quite often when we think about these things and when we're worked up and we're in a bad place, we always go straight to the worst case scenario with things as well, which, that never really, very rarely comes to fruition. So recognizing that when you are triggered and you're stressing over something, you're going, okay, I'm just going to pull up and think of what's the worst thing. Sure, that's the worst thing that can happen, but it's probably pretty unlikely that it will happen. And then you realize that the whole thing you're worrying about might never happen at all. So letting go of that thought. And I was really lucky at the time when I came home. I'd spend time with my kids and be present with them, whether it's coloring in or drawing. Through COVID was really good for that, because everyone was locked in. So we would download, and I would do a lot of drawing for my kids, and I'm pretty good at drawing unicorns and coloring in rainbows now as well, thanks to that. But, the phone was put away and I would be 100% in the moment, and there was nothing else that I would think about than where I was with my kids right then. And they benefited from that because they could tell that I was present for them, and there was nothing else in the back of my mind distracting our engagement. So,
and that's super important, because our kids learn the patterns from the parents. And are they learning an anxious pattern, that busyness is what you need to do in order to be valued, or is it okay to rest and go outside and play, and time for turning off the electronics? Super important.
And it really is.
So can you leave our listeners with something that they can do, something that they might take action on right away? The holistic approach is definitely something I'm totally agreeing with. Outside with nature, exercise, getting grounded, all those things are beautiful.
Yeah, and I worked on my posture a lot as well. I realized that the poor posture can lead to sort of triggering parts of your nervous system that trigger that fight or flight mode without even mentally realizing you're doing it. So it might not be something that sets your anxiety off that you're thinking about, but your body could be going into a stress state because of your posture and triggering parts of that. So it's another aspect. But if I had one really huge giveaway that anyone that they can do today, tonight, is it was a clear turning point for me on my journey, where I felt that the black hole, the pit that I was in, stuck in the bottom, not being able to climb out of, that changed for me when I was actually listening to another podcast, and I learned to forgive myself for whatever it is that I had. And self-forgiveness is just such a powerful tool. Go somewhere tonight, find your quiet space where you like to talk or where you like to go and collect your thoughts. And for whatever it is, even if you can't think of what it actually is just to forgive yourself. And it was a clear changing day for me. And I still remember it now, that it was a massive, massive turning point for me, where things started to turn around.
Beautiful.
Sure.
Yeah. Forgiveness, self-acceptance, accept as when we can do that for ourselves.
Yeah. Very powerful.
We can do it for others, right? And we need a lot more of that. And lots of the anxious mind is thoughts of, I'm not good enough. What if I fail? I've done it wrong. I'm going to fail again. So beautiful. Yeah, beautiful.
Definitely the place to start. And you don't have to tackle everything at once. You don't have to have all the answers at once. As long as you've got somewhere to start and you're conscious and you're aware of that, and you don't even know what you're forgiving yourself for, just try it. It's really a great thing, and a great thing you can give to yourself, which is what you need to focus on, is yourself to start with.
I like that. I heard from a speaker once a saying that I use for myself every once in a while when I get a little bit hyper. And it was, there's nowhere I need to go. There's nothing I need to prove. I've done enough.
That's right.
And so sometimes we just need to talk ourselves down with a little mantra like that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, Aaron, it was really nice to hear your journey.
Yeah, thank you.
and how you overcame and handled your anxiety and made things better for yourself. That's awesome. People need to hear that.
Yeah, and it's nice. Anything that I can do to share with people, just to realize they're not alone on this journey and that other people are going through it, and that you can get through it. I'm so happy to join in there. Thanks very much for having me on to share a bit of my story, and hopefully this can help other people. Yeah.
So we'll put the links below your video on the page so people can easily find your podcast, Instagram, website, Patreon, and look you up for more.
Sure.
That's wonderful.
No, thanks very much.
So thank you, Aaron. Enjoy your winter. We're in summer.
Thanks. Yeah, we're getting a nice break from the heat, so it's really nice.
All right. You take care.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. See ya.